Hey everyone. So this is Mr. Nalepa. I'm making this video because this being the last day before winter break, hence my pajamas, there are a fair number of students out. So I want to post this so everyone is on the same page when we come back. Okay. So you'll see here our Get Ready board says both handouts. The handouts I expect you to pick up when you're back in school, but they're available digitally as well. They're the rubric and the format checklist. Okay. So also, if you were not in school yesterday and still have not taken the open material India test, you need to see me or contact me immediately about scheduling or planning that. Okay. So this is about explaining our end of quarter project. Which is pretty important explanation because it's 1/4 of your class grade. We give every country equal weight. No country is more important than the other country when we're learning about the world. Israel's 1/4 of your grade. China's 1/4 of your grade. India's 1/4 of your grade. And whatever country you pick will be 1/4 of your grade. So this is a project where you pick the country and tell us about it. Okay. So generally speaking, it's a slideshow. Okay. So 40 of the 50 points will be covered through your research and what you show us on your slides. So this is slightly cut off, but you essentially will get the image here. So every slide gets its own individual grade. Mentally, when I think and I'm grading it, every slide essentially starts off at full point, which is a 2. My little laser pointer here, it's a 2. If I see something that's wrong with the slide, as we will discuss, then it might drop down to a 1. For this time around, it would hopefully be very difficult to get a 0 because the slide essentially has to be missing. I asked for a slide about something, you just don't have it. On the flip side, you could possibly get a 3. Now, keep in mind, a 2 is full points, so a 3 could bump you in the realm of extra credit, which would be the only time I really offer extra credit. Basically, for a 3, you would have to present it to the class. You have to do a good job presenting, as in you really kind of show you know your stuff. Good, interesting information, and the slide itself looks good. Like, can't be a sloppy looking slide. But you do a good job presenting, that's not going to be enough for a 3. But if you get a 2 on every single slide, that's full points. So 20 slides, 2 on each one, that's 40 points. And the slideshow is 40 points. So if there's nothing wrong with the slide, 2. If there's something wrong with the slide, you get a 1. If the slide's missing, you get a 0. And that's basically how they're scheduled. So what are we looking for? So basically for this slideshow, you really want to think of it as 2 things. I always kind of call it like the 2 axes. One, you need the information that I'm asking for, right? You want to cover what I'm asking for. Like, what information should you be telling us about your country? I'm telling you what information at bare minimum you should be covering. The other part of it is kind of like the other axis, which is it's got to look good. Okay, so it's a visual presentation, so it's got to look good. So I have some criteria for both axes, so to speak. I have some basics about what you should be covering information-wise, and some criteria about how things should be looking. So let's review some stuff. So this being a slideshow, let's talk about do's and don'ts. First off, you should not be writing in sentences. Basically, a really important key aspect about this project is that you are going and researching on websites, sure, but the idea is not copy-paste or just write down word for word. You are processing the information from the websites and then writing down snippets of information. Snippets as in bullet points. I have bullet here in parentheses because you don't technically need a bullet. It's how the information is formatted, okay? You get a 50-word cutoff on your slide. That's to encourage you. I need to simplify and boil it down. If you think back to the slides I've been showing you all quarter, that's essentially what I've been doing. I haven't been giving you line-by-line sentences of information. It's information that I've simplified for you to write a few things down about it, but then I can expand on or talk more about. You'd want to include pictures. Every single slide should have a picture. It is a visual presentation. So you are basically giving a fun visual presentation about your country to your classmates. So every picture should have at least one, every slide should have at least one picture, if not more. 50% rule is that basically your one picture or your multiple pictures should take up about 50% of the background. If you're not quite meeting that, you're missing the point. It is a visual. So we want to look at pretty pictures while you tell us information, basically. Do not include words you can't define. It screams plagiarism. So plagiarism technically is a legal thing, is taking someone else's words as your own, and you're not giving them credit. So that's obviously a legal issue. But for me, it's more about the content. If you're just copying and pasting, you're not learning. So every single piece of information you should have been processing through your head and putting it in your own words on the slide, as in how would I say this to a 7th grade class? Probably not in the exact same wordage as what's on the internet in most cases. So yes, it's a legal issue if you just copy and paste, and words that you don't even know shouldn't be on your slideshow. So you should either learn what the word means or not put it on your slideshow. It always makes me kind of confused when I ask a student what the word means and they say, I don't know. I'm like, why would you make the decision to put a word you don't know on your slides? That puts you in an awkward position. Do not include too much information. So that's slightly different. So you do have the 50 word maximum up here, but too much information is like trying to cover too many different things. You want to relatively keep it simple, straightforward. Okay. You're giving us a rundown of your country. You can't be too detailed. You got to give us general, simple stuff. Don't try to cover too much. Try to find information that's both informative, as in we get some information, and interesting. So I give you the bare bones expectations of what I want you to cover informationally. However, there's a lot of room to add and find interesting stuff related to that. So it's a presentation. You want to, in a sense, not just give them bare bones. You want to try to find, at least in some pieces parts, some interesting information. This might be kind of a duh thing, but we got to keep this in mind. Don't use backgrounds if it's going to make your text or pictures hard to see. Everything has to work with one another, right? I always give the example of a children's book. Your children's books are going to have pictures. They're going to have text because you have to read something, but it all works together. There's my sensor light. You can't sacrifice one for the other. Everything's got to look good. You got to have nice pictures. The text you're going to have some text. It's all got to work together and look good. Okay. So you shouldn't say, well, this picture looks good, but I'm not going to be able to see the text. You got to balance it out. Do check to see if your picture is right. Google Images or whatever image search you're using they create suggestions for you based off what you search. They are not saying this is for sure right and accurate. It's not a human being giving you results. So you need to make sure on your side that whatever picture you're using is actually what you think it is. And also related to that, you need to know what the picture is. You can't just say, well, this looks good. Well, do you know what actually is being shown on your pictures? Include your websites and speaker notes. So this is a kind of like a rough and tough way of doing a bibliography. Your language arts teachers would not like this format, but for this class, it works. So what happens is the speaker notes is this area, as I exit down, below the slide. So below Google Slides, it says click to add speaker notes. Whatever website you use, or maybe multiple websites on this slide, you copy and paste the entire website address. For this website address, it would be all of this. It's not docs.google.com and that's the end. It's the entire website address you use and all you have to do is copy and paste it down here. So you can reference it later if you want to, and I can reference it. Okay. So continuing on, do's and don'ts. As this loads. Getting a little slow on me. I should not have exited, apparently. Loading. Okay. You have captions for your pictures. So basically, I expect you to know what you're showing. If you can imagine a teacher showing a picture, just being up there and a student saying, oh, can you, Mr. Nalepa, can you let me know what that picture is? And I go, I don't know. Like I just have a random picture and I don't know what I'm showing you. You obviously want to know what you're showing your audience. So the picture could be related to your information, but different, as in, yes, this ties into my information, but how? What is the picture showing us? And definitely practice and read through your presentation. The most points I mark off every quarter for this is spelling and punctuation, meaning, or spelling and capitalization. So since you don't need to have sentence structure and bullet points, we don't have to worry about punctuation necessarily, but spelling, make sure things are spelled correctly and make sure proper nouns are getting the respect, I kind of say, and they're capitalized. People, places, things should be capitalized. And you don't necessarily have to know that off the top of your head. Your internet research should show you the correct ways of spelling them and capitalizing them. You don't have to know those rules right off the top of your head. You just have to look at the model for you. So some examples. So I look at, I take students' past slides and I use them as examples of do's and don'ts. So here we have a slide, obviously, you see some information. Generally speaking, this student is talking about this waterfall, and then they show you the waterfall. Okay, so let me give you a moment and let you think, what would I have a problem with this slide? So hopefully you're going to see the paragraph and the sentence structure. Those sort of things lead me to believe you just copied and pasted from a website, which obviously makes me as your teacher wanting you to learn grumpy. Copying and pasting is not learning. You should be reading, processing the information, taking what you think is important and putting it down in bullet points. Although you don't technically need the dot, but the dot's fine in front of it. This is just paragraph, like they copied and pasted. The other thing you should have probably noticed is this is a pretty sad looking picture. Not only does it not meet 50% of the slide, but it's pretty blurry. So the subject of this is a waterfall. You would think that would be given more emphasis, like you're trying to show us this waterfall and tell us about it. So here would be a better version of this, which didn't take me long. So what are we seeing in this picture? In this case, the title almost acts as the caption. So I know what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the Chenjian waterfall, sky connect with land. And then as the presenter, I say, this is Chenjian waterfall, sky connect with land. It's a traditional place for people to go visit to honor one's ancestors by placing a larger stone on top of a smaller stone. And it's also a beautiful location. And then you give them the rundown as they're looking at a pretty picture. Okay. In this case, what's wrong with it? So hopefully immediately you're triggered. Well, it's black and white, but there's not, that's not pretty to me, but it's not something I grade on. What I'm grading on is that I don't see an image. Like every slide is required to have one image. This does not have an image. However, it does have bulleted informations and it is under 50 words. So really the big aspect of this, why they lost the points, because there's no image. The information I find boring, but boring is subjective and not something I can grade on. Like if I find it boring, doesn't mean you think it's boring, but they could have easily have Googled one of these locations and provided a picture of it, but it's just blank. This one, issues. So you should be thinking to yourself, well, there's a whole mess of issues. One, it's very hard to read. So the dark text on a fairly dark background, hard to read. 2, over 50 words. 3, they are writing in sentences. Just because you put a bullet point in front of a sentence doesn't mean it suddenly becomes not a sentence. I don't want sentence structure. I want quick snippets of information. Like if you were writing notes, how would you write it out? You wouldn't write a complete whole sentence when you're trying to write notes. You would just say, here's some quick thoughts. Okay. So also the last, there's no picture. They cover 6 historical events in one slide. That's too much. That's too much information. You really should be keeping it simple. Okay. This one, Capelbrook was built in 1333, and then in 1993 it burned down. Hopefully the obvious thing that comes to your mind is that the picture is too small. This is not even close to 50% of the slide. You could do the math and measure, like, how big is the screen, length and width? How big is this picture, length and width? Does that 50%? You don't have to be that precise. I need to see an effort that you work towards 50%. Okay. If it's like 47%, it's not the end of the world, but like this picture is nowhere near that. So most of their space is given to blank space and text. That's not what we want to see as your audience. We want to see big, pretty pictures with text. Sure, a few pieces of text, just like a children's book. Children's book's not all about the text. They're going to have at least 50% given over to illustrations and pictures. So this is a better version. Bigger version, more simple information is boiling it down. Okay. So this is a historical slide about talking about their history. So again, you have some issues here. So one, you have a picture and it's very much large part of the slide. However, it's very hard to see the picture. So they took a semi-transparent box and basically covered it up just so you can kind of say like, oh, I can see kind of what's going on there. That's not good. You're basically covering up the picture. Imagine again, the children's book. Imagine children's books doing this. Like you're covering up the picture with text essentially where you can kind of see through it. That's not good. Another big issue of this, if you're reading through it, is there are lots of proper nouns that should have been capitalized. And those things all would have been capitalized on the website you got the information from. So it's a matter of, did you pay attention and say, well, these should be capitalized because they're proper nouns. They're names and places. Okay. A better version of this slide, or actually, better version of this slide would be to eliminate some of the fluff information, make the text box smaller, and so we can see more of the picture. Okay. Now, your rubric gives you the rundown of the information I want covered. Your format checklist is the checklist of format-wise. So the format checklist is the visual, the rubric is the information. Those are our two axes, okay? So you hopefully should be looking at the rubric, which is posted online, or have a printout at this point, okay? Because you were expected to watch this video. So if you're looking at the rubric, you'll see that the first two slides are your intro slides. So slide one, you should have one, the location map of the country, two, the official country name, the widely used country name, and group members, as in like who made the slideshow. So I did a mock-up using the United States. Looking at this slide, hopefully you can point out which one of those 4 bullet points is not covered. So going through the 4 bullet points, do we have the official name? Yes, we have the official name. Do we have widely used name or names? Yeah, we have America, US of A, America. You can have a little fun with it. You can find other names. That's covered. Do we know who the slideshow is by? Yes. The name or names is over here. What the problem is this is not a location map. This does not show us where in the world your country is. This just shows us the country, right? So location map shows us where in the world the country is, at least a continent level sized zoom out. So I can't even see the whole continent of North America. So in the case of the United States, it's big enough that I can point it out in the world map. If your country's kind of small, you probably want to zoom in on the continent. I don't really want it smaller than a continent size. Slide 2 is the flag and everything about the flag. So for the United States, it's a fairly simple design. You have 13 stripes and then 50 stars. 50 stars represent the 50 states and the stripe represent the original colonies. Done. That's not hard to cover. However, if your country's flag is a little bit more complicated, your job's a little harder because something like this, you have the tricolor, but you also have the crest. And if it's on the flag, you should know what it is. So I specifically should know about the boat. You should know about the mountain. You should know about the sun. You should know about the eagle thing or vulture. You should know about the axe. Like, what are these things? You can't just say yellow means this, blue means this, red means this, and here's the crest. Well, the crest is part of the flag. So therefore, you need to know about the things on the crest. You can't just say it's the crest, okay? There's little pieces of vegetation here. What are those? So if I point to one of those things and I say, what is that? And you don't know, you have not done your job on the flag, okay? Moving on from the intro slides, you have, as you see on your rubric, history slides. I'm giving you 3 slides to talk about history. Okay. So basically you should think of these history slides as turning point events. What happened in my country? This is a historical event that occurred that made it the place it is today. Like, you cannot be going too far back in history if it has no relevance. For example, in Egypt, the ancient Egyptians really have zero relevance of what's going on in Egypt today. Did it happen? Yes. But you can't really argue to me that the pharaohs are affecting Egypt today because they're a largely Arabic society today that's not really tied into the history there. So you need to think about, you read about the history and find historical events that would be turning point events. We've talked about those sort of things in class. That's the historical events we cover when our countries. Boxer Rebellion. Why is it a turning point? It's because without the Boxer Rebellion, probably the dynasty system would have continued on longer. Mao Zedong. Why is he a turning point? He brought communism to China. So, those sorts of things you should be considered. So for the United States, we're a turning point. Well, there's a lot of turning point things for the United States, but I picked the Revolutionary War. So what happened? You give us what happened. Why is it important? So what happened? There were colonists in America. They were frustrated with the British government who controlled them. Simple information. It's not a sentence. It's just simple and brief. Long story short, they rebelled against the British. Okay. Over here, I have a related historical painting. The caption's a little bit cut off here, but I'm telling you what it is. These are colonists who have tarred and feathered a British tax collector. Well, I decided, since I have 3 slides on history, I'm going to use another slide on the Revolutionary War. So I continue on. The Americans, able to beat the British, became their own independent country. This is Washington crossing the Delaware. So why is this important? Why am I talking about this for my country? It's because without this, they wouldn't have been independent, or at least as independent as they were as early as they were. So Revolutionary War is important for my country because they've gained their independence. What's another? So those are 2 slides on history. I still need to cover another slide on history. So I picked another one, World War II. Obviously, there's lots of other historical events that I could argue are turning points in the United States, like 9/11, Vietnam War, Civil Rights Movement, all these things. But World War II, we were bombed. We were dragged into World War II. By the end, we were very strong. Why am I arguing this is a turning point? This made us a world superpower. So there's a bit of an argument. This is important to my country today because it made us a world superpower. Okay. Related picture, guy kissing a girl. And when they found the news, the war was officially over. So I know what the picture is showing. I know how it's related to the information. Okay. So those are history slides. Then you move on into government slides. I'm pretty specific about what I want to see on each government slide, as you can see from the rubric. Slide 1 about government should be who has the most political power. Who are they? Their name and their title. So the name here is Joe Biden. The title is the United States president. And how long are they allowed in office? The United States president is allowed in office potentially for 8 years, 4-year terms. So they can get elected for 4 years and get reelected. I'm asking how long they're able to. Not how long have they been, how long they're able to. So here's Joe Biden. Here's his official portrait. I'm trying to make sure my pictures are covering close to 50% of the slide space. Okay, that's fairly simple. The next slide, legislative, because this is obviously the top executive. Remember, this is what we've done in class, legislative, executive. How is the legislative branch structure? Every country has a group of people that make and pass laws. That is their legislature. I've said this, I can't count how many times I've said this in class. The legislature is just a group of people. The question is, for every country, how do they organize them? In the United States, we are organized into 2 houses. We have a bicameral system. We have the House of Representatives and we have the Senate. There's 535 total. So I've given you the breakdown. It's 2 houses. There's how many representatives, and also mention there's a picture of the building. This is the building, and what is the building called? It's called the U.S. Capitol Building. So I want to know the name of the building and the breakdown. So obviously mentioned there in your rubric. The third item on your rubric for government is big news. The big news doesn't necessarily have to be directly about the government. It's an opportunity to look up a news story and something important that's happening in your country. So you are finding out something big that's happening in your country and you're explaining to the class, like, hey, this is happening in my country. And let me break it down for you a little bit for this slide. So for it to qualify as big news, it needs to affect at least thousands to millions of people. It's not big news if it's a car chase in like Duluth, Minnesota. Like, you need it to have an argument that it's affecting a lot of people. Affecting a lot of people doesn't mean people had to have died. So a lot of my 7th graders said, well, no one died. Well, lots of lives can be affected even if people aren't dying. So that's kind of like something that we have to break away from. People don't have to be dead for lots of people's lives to be affected. It could be that people have passed away. However, it does not have to be. And we want to stay away from COVID. We all get it. COVID is day-to-day news. We've been living in it for the last year and a half. We don't need to know about COVID. There are other things going around in your country besides COVID. So you need to find something besides COVID. So those are your 3 slides about government. So about the United States, what's happened recently, there's a Facebook whistleblower, which is obviously a U.S. company. A lot of people use the company, making choices of profit over people. Notice I just write, explain how it affects lives. So I don't have an explanation on the slide, but maybe this is a reminder as my presentation. I need to do that to get this point, because you can't just say, here's the news headline. You need to explain what your news is and how it's affecting people. Facebook is affecting people because clearly they're making decisions in their calculations and algorithms. They don't really care if it's putting people in mental health problems, as in self-esteem and things like that. They just care if people are getting advertising money. So that's how it's affecting lives, essentially. So those are the end of my mock-up slides. I didn't do the rest. So if you flip over the rubric on the back, you have geography and climate. You have places to see, things to do. And you have traditions and culture. So those are relatively self-explanatory, but we will touch on those as you are working on your projects after break. So your country choices. There are roughly 195 countries. So you can't pick Israel. We did it. China, we did it. India, we did it. You can't do the United States because we live here. Other than that, you can pick whatever you want. And also for you watching this video, the people in school already have picked country choices. So you're going to have to base your country choices off of the country selection list, which I'll post as soon as I can. So you need to go to your class and see what countries have been picked. And if you're not in a group already, you need to pick a country that has not been chosen already and email me about it. Okay. And that obviously needs to be done as soon as possible, because you need to start your research as soon as possible when we get back from break. You can work with groups, as I talked about. Work by yourself, very okay. Work with one other person, very okay. Work with 2 other people. After many years of doing this project, I don't see advantages of either way. I don't see a clear advantage in any way of working alone or a clear advantage of working with other people. You see grades along both spectrums, no matter how you're partnering up. So it's just kind of what you would like to work with. Make sure you're reliable. They got to be in the same class, but make sure they're reliable. If they make you laugh, that's great, but doesn't mean they're a good person to work with. Like, there's a difference between, hey, they're funny and let's do a 50-point project with them. That's usually kind of my general advice. The last day. So if you remember, slideshow's only 40 points, right? The last day of class of this quarter, we do the last 10 points, which is you bringing in something physical. I usually refer to those as like shareable. So if during COVID, what we're going to do is you have something for each person in class that you can drop in a bag and that they can have. They get to keep it. And you think of something creative from your country that you can do that. Or you or your group can record a video filming a cultural aspect from your country, like a dance, like you recreate a dance or a play or skit. It needs to be at least 15 seconds. Like the average TikTok is like 12 seconds, and those are entertaining. So you're thinking about what could I like record myself or my group doing that's also kind of related to my country or culture. So it's items or recording. Okay. So that is my rundown of the project. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions or concerns. And if you watch this before break, have a good break. If you watch it close to the end of the break, I will see you soon.